having a home.
Are we
for your...
streaming now?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's bring everybody online to let them know what's going on. We apologize, but it looks like Chuck is running behind schedule. We're not able to reach him on Skype.
Found it.
You found it?
Yeah, I'm whispering it to you guys.
Okay.
Oh.
So instead, we're going to kind of run a backup panel that we've been kind of talking about doing for a while now and just never got around to on our show. And it is press tips for indie devs. And this is now keep in mind we're not necessarily the largest or most recognizable journalistic group out there, but this is we're very passionate about what we do, and we definitely spend a lot of time trying to get in contact with devs.
Yeah.
What?
Oh, no,
What?
sorry. I guess I sent the wrong note or whatever, and this isn't what you guys were talking about? Okay.
Press tips. So this is going to basically, and forgive us because we didn't really have it outlined. It's just been kind of percolating in the back of our heads for a while, on things that independent devs can do to help them get noticed by even smaller groups like us. So and we apologize that Chuck couldn't be on the show. I'm assuming that something was going on and building on fire or something, but we'd be more
As
than
is
happy
customary with IRX.
with IRX. There's at least one house fire. Where do we want to start, Josh?
Yeah. So first thing with press tips is that a lot of this comes from actually last year when I was reaching out to people for IRX. I noticed that it was really hard to get in contact with and find information with a lot of devs, because I was reaching out to people since it was a brand new thing. And the first thing I noticed is a lot of games don't actually have websites. Believe it or not. So it's like how do you provide information to people, unless you just tell it to them straight out? Or how do you let people find information about you? You can't reach everyone in the world yourself. So you have to help people find you. If
even a free website that you don't even pay anything for, like a webs.com thing, or Wix or Weebly or all those things are so much better, because if somebody if somebody cares, they don't own this domain and it's hosted through this, if somebody cares about that, you don't want to really bother with them anyway, because if you're making a game and you have a website, it's gamewebsite.weebly.com or what is it, Weebly, Webs, any of those.
It's all both of it. But the fact of the matter is that you don't even need money. And, there's free sites to set up. You don't have to necessarily buy a domain, although it helps if you can.
It does help,
but you don't need to. I've even seen. Remember, he's not displaying at IRX this year, but the guy who made rock paper scissors game.
Yep.
All he has is a Facebook page for that game, but at least that is a place that holds its information that he can send people to say, "Hey, this is my game. Check it out."
And the cool thing too is that Facebook's a really great option, because it comes up real easy in search engines. If you search something, Facebook will probably pop up. And it's a great way to manage the community around you.
Well, you kind of saw that. You kind of saw that with Logan in his panel, about how Facebook is actually a pretty good tool for marketing and things like that. So, I mean, you can find a home on Facebook or any free site, and that contains all of your information. So when someone's looking for you, they can find that and everything they need, and contact you. With that said, a lot of people did have pages, but no contact information, or at least not easily accessible contact information. So it's like people are going to want to reach out to you and ask questions. They want to, if you want press to cover your game, press are going to want to contact you. They want a press kit. They want a press email. They maybe want a review code to show the people their game or something. Or
even if you don't have a build with a code, setting up like a private Google Drive link for devs to go and download something. It's not as secure, but if it's a legitimate website and it's a legitimate request.
At this point, there is enough infrastructure available for free and or extremely inexpensive that there's literally no justification for it unless you just don't care. And that comes across, and it sucks because there have been some games that we've thought of, and like as soon as we try and get in contact with them or find out more information, I stop caring because it's managing the perception. As somebody who's trying to get information on your game, if I have to. And this makes me sound kind of lazy, I'll admit, but I don't have a whole lot of free time to go digging around in the deep web to find info on you.
Look at it this way, though. I mean, if we are like probably on the extreme of like being willing to go digging, right?
Yeah.
I mean, when I was looking for people to contact, I was digging for some of the people's information, and that's a lot to ask for of someone who's part of the press.
I emailed a dev's mom. Because that was the only way I could get in contact with them.
A lot of the times, I mean, and actually, to be honest, at this point, I don't have as much time because IGR has grown, and so has IRX. Mm-hmm. But I mean, think of even for other press sites that you want to get in touch of. There's no way in hell someone from IGN is going to be, being like, well, I can't find his email here on his website. Well, let me go digging and see if I can go through like 20 different links to find his email address. No one's going to do that at IGN. Not at all. They don't have time. They get inundated with emails. I mean, if I get a shit ton of emails, every day from devs, you can only imagine what the bigger sites get. Thousands and thousands. So
easily.
If you don't have, I mean, that's the first thing I look for a lot of times is contact. So, I mean, if it's not like a freaking contact right on your homepage, there should be a link clearly accessible. You can put it at the bottom. I would suggest putting it at the top because, that's the first thing they see is the top of the page.
Yeah, but, I mean, if we don't
or on the side corner.
Yeah, exactly. If we don't see any contact information, the first thing I do is I'll scroll down and be like, is there a contact thing at the bottom?
I do.
If there's even if there's like, even if like you have this if you have this Phil Fish mentality that your website has to be perfect, and you don't want that information cluttering everything that everybody's looking for, put it in a link in the bottom. That's totally fine. Even if it's just a Gmail email that you created for
it's more
your
important
game,
for press to not have Gmail. If a dev has Gmail, no one cares really.
Yeah, it's like a dev has Gmail. It's like, cool, awesome. You're making a game. You don't have time to worry about all that other stuff. Like it makes sense to us. The domain doesn't matter. The fact that if it's easy to get in contact with you, yeah.
That's what we see. If you show us a good game right on your homepage, that's what's going to draw us in. And then easily accessible contact information. Speaking of that, easily accessible social media information. There's no excuse to. I know it's more things to manage, but there's really no excuse to not have a Twitter or even a Facebook. At least a Twitter, because Twitter is actually really helpful.
And
Twitter's also really helpful in building community, because if you have a game and you have a Twitter, and I know this is veering off a little bit, but if you have a place and the people who are interested in your game and that's where they get their information, even if it is just Twitter and you don't like update your website ever, a tweet every week goes a surprisingly long way, especially from guys like us who are looking into your game that you've been developing for a really long time for the first time. We don't know anything about it. One of the biggest red flags is they have a Twitter and their last tweet was in November.
Yeah, it tells us that you're not active. But to be honest, we, outside of conventions, like physical conventions, or conventions like this, to be honest, but outside of conventions, Twitter has probably been the biggest source of of creating relationships and contacts with devs. And I've heard that from other devs too, that they've made relationships with other devs through Twitter. You know, that and forums probably, but forums isn't really a press thing necessarily. So, and the other thing, you know, going back to having a home for your game and contact information, there were so many Twitter accounts that you can link it right on your profile on Twitter. So I'm like going through, because I was seeing who was following us and who we were following so I could contact them. I'm like, okay, well, they don't have a link to their website or any kind of contact information.
Chuck's here.
How do I do that? Yep, there's Chuck. So
hey, sorry about that, guy.
No problem. So what we're going to do at this point is, excuse the camera switching around. If you want to know more about press tips, feel free to email us, contact@indiegameriot.com, or you can email us all individually if you really want to. You can see our names at the bottom left of each of our screens. It's just that at indiegameriot.com. So feel free to ask us, and we can talk about it more.
Yeah, give us 5 minutes. We'll get Chuck set up and go from there.
Yes. All right. And again, excuse the camera switch around. It shouldn't take too long, though. That's why I'm not going to go on hosting.
Hey, Chuck, how's it going?
Oh, not too bad. I just was dealing with something, running a little bit late. I'm going to be a little bit limited time-wise today, unlike last time. But is that okay?
Yeah,
totally
no,
fine.
that's fine.
Yeah. At this point, I mean, there's what was it, 11:20, so was that
30 minutes?
30 minutes.
That's 25 minutes that we have left in this time slot anyway. So,
Okay.
That sound good?
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds fine. Yeah, I apologize. There's something going on. I'm trying to take care of it. So
that's what we figured. It's IRX weekend. Something's got to burn down.
yeah.
Will you be using a webcam or?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I'm using my Skype on my phone. Let me see if I can use the Wi-Fi on it.
Oh, sure.
That should work.
I mean, I'm not near a computer, so.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Let me pull out of here real quick, and so you're not getting any video, right?
No,
not at the
not
moment.
yet.
Okay. All right. Let me pull in. I'm going to get out of here real quick, and I'll go into Skype Wi-Fi. Hold on a second.
Sure.
Okay.
Right back.
Everybody have their morning stimulant drink?
I have a Mike's Hard Lemonade.
Well, that's a depressing, but you know.
What's depressing about it? It's refreshing. It's cold.
Depressing.
It has alcohol.
And if you're
As
an
in
alcoholic,
the
you can mix
literal
it
definition of depress.
No, hold on. I don't think that's right. I'm gonna look that up.
All right, there's Chuck. We're gonna go. I gotta just change the camera.
It's gonna be the most scenic panel at IRX.
Absolutely. Actually, I think since his camera, since he's using his phone camera, it was probably a good idea if we close our cameras to give him more room.
Oh, it's working fine for me. Can you guys see me?
Yeah, I can see you. We're just trying to get you a bigger picture since you're using the phone camera. So let me get you there, and there. Do that. Okay, and I'm going to move you to the center. There you go. Nice little sliver of heaven. All right, we're going to leave it to Chuck and have at it.
Cool. So what do you guys want me to do?
Oh, Josh?
I think he muted his mic. Go ahead and you've got 25 minutes to your pedal was making ZED as an indie company. So however you want to go.
This is Chuck Carter. He just recently had a successful Kickstarter for his upcoming game ZED, which is a journey through the mind of a dreamer. I'll leave you to explain the rest.
Okay, yeah, ZED basically it's a game about this man who is dying. Basically, he's dying from cancer, and he's also suffering from dementia. So he He can't even remember to do things like how to tie his shoes and a variety of things. Yet there's still a part deep inside of his mind that's still very active. And he wants to finish, has wanted to finish this one gift to give to his granddaughter, who is yet unborn. So he'll never actually see her before he dies, but he wants to finish this one gift. And as a player, what you do is you are in his dreams. And by being in his dreams, you try to help him reconnect the areas of his mind through his dreams and his memories in order to be able to let him finish this one last project. And that's essentially the game in a nutshell. There's a lot of things where there's two aspects to his personality. One that's trying to be very helpful but very forgetful, obviously, and the other part who doesn't want to face his own memories. And so that person sort of, that aspect of his personality conflicts. There's a conflict between him, that part of it, and his other part. So you are trying to connect things, whereas this other part's trying to block you from connecting them. So that's pretty much explains the game. I mean, there's a lot more to it, obviously. There's a lot of fantastic dreamscapes. He was a very imaginative person, so his dreams reflect that. And it's a first-person adventure where you're in the dreams and you move around at free will. It's all fully immersive. And we're using Unreal Edit 4 to basically build the game and let you play in it. Plus, we're working with Oculus right now to do the VR aspect of it. So there's a lot of irons in the fire as far as the production on it goes and where the game is eventually going to be published at. But that's it in a nutshell.
So, what kind of challenges would you say that you've had bringing it to this point? I mean, you guys did just successfully have a Kickstarter, and you said that you're working with Oculus, so we didn't quite reach that stretch goal, but obviously it's in the works now. What kind of challenges have you had recently to get us to this point?
Well, it's the biggest challenge is that we're a very small team and we're doing a very ambitious project. And, we're scaling the project to the level of the production capability of Eagre right now. And after the Kickstarter, it's helped us succeed to the point to where we can bring on some additional contractual help, which will help us actually produce the game. And we're facing the same thing a lot of small companies do, and that's we're funding ourselves, which is very difficult to do in any kind of a production environment, especially if you have to make a living while you're doing it. And the biggest challenge was to keep the company open, which I've been doing through my work I do a lot of work for NASA, where I do a lot of illustration work for them and for various science clients. So my days tended to be very, very long, where I'd spend half a day working on client work and then probably 3/4 of the rest of the day. Seems kind of odd math there, but I wasn't sleeping very much when we were in the middle of heavy production for the Kickstarter and getting the demo out. So funding is a very big part of keeping a company open, obviously. And I think that the biggest challenge too is keeping everybody interested, because we're all kind of scattered all over the place. And we've got 3 people in Ohio. Seth is based out of Boston. He's our production manager. And then we've got Josh, who's based out of New York, who does a lot of analytics. He's helping us with a lot of the design and documentation of everything that we're doing prior to going in production. So, we're facing a lot of the same challenges a lot of small companies face, just trying to keep the doors open and working our butts off. But, we're going to do it. And, no matter what it takes. And the only way to really succeed in a small company like this, you have to have a lot of passion for what you're doing, and you really, really have to believe in what you're doing. And we're firmly in that camp. We believe very, very strongly in ZED. We think it's a great idea. We love the way that people have responded to it on Kickstarter. Like you folks and everybody else that had a chance to see the demo. It's been very encouraging to see the comments that we're getting for it, and that keeps us going as well. So there's a lot of factors to come into play to make a successful product, as well as, keeping the company alive and vibrant and everything else.
So what are some of the challenges that you're facing with ZED that you may not have had to deal with during your production on the AAA titles that you've worked on in the past?
Well, a lot of the AAA titles I've worked on in the past had teams of, 25 to up to 150 people. They were, part of very large companies that can afford, to, can afford to have all these various teams working on a single game. You had multiple art teams working on different levels simultaneously. A lot of the companies would have the artists would be mixed in these these sets of cubicles. These, I forget what you call them exactly, but we'd be a large group where we'd have programmers, artists, and designers all working right next to each other. So there was a lot of the funding was never an issue with that. The only last time I ever had any dealings with funding issues was with when we worked on Myst, and there was only 4 of us working on that game, and then we were funded up front with that, so that wasn't even a problem back then. At least not as much of a problem. There was obviously times when money was slow coming in, but with the large AAA titles, you've got very large established companies working on those. Westwood Studios, Vicarious Visions, Smart Bomb Interactive. All these companies had very large staffs. I think Westwood at its peak was about 230. Vicarious at least 200 people. Like when we worked on Marvel Ultimate Alliance, I think there was like well over 100 people working on that game. And so it's just a totally different animal. An indie company, we don't have those types of resources, so we have to get very imaginative, in how we actually produce a game and what we do to make sure that we're able to produce it. And a big part of that again is you wear a lot of hats in a small company like this.
What would you say was the from a business perspective, not necessarily a dev perspective, but from a small business perspective, what was the most surprising aspect of getting things going?
From a business perspective, first of all, you got to create a business. A lot of people start these companies without thinking in terms of what kind of a company are you? LLC, a C Corp, S Corp. There's a lot of different ways to look at how you become a business. And I think the most difficult part of it, to be totally honest, there really wasn't anything hard about starting the business. I knew what I wanted to do, and I knew exactly how to do it. And, I guess it just comes down to a bit of money, to be able to start up a company. You need to get a lawyer or somebody to help you start the corporation to figure out exactly what kind of corporation you want to be. So I think not being a businessman myself is probably, I would say that was probably one of the bigger hurdles. I had to be kind of, taught about what it is that I have to do as far as starting a business. I've been, in the game industry, I've worked as art director, computer graphics supervisor. I was an art group manager where I managed, dozens of artists, as well as being an artist animator, cinematics artist, all these different things. I've worn all these different hats, but they've never really involved the business side of it. So for me, starting the company was an easy idea. I wanted to do it. The actual nuts and bolts of it, I had a lot to learn. And I think that really, if you are planning on starting a small game business, you really need to look into the nuts and bolts of what you need to do to make it, one, a legal entity. So that way, when people start giving you money, you have, everything set up for tax purposes and all that business side of it. Because without all that sort of thing, you can get yourself into serious trouble. If you start using money without looking at all the different aspects of the state and local and federal taxes and all the different things that are required to become a corporation. So all that stuff I had to learn as I went along. But I was really lucky in that respect that I had a lot of good people around me helping me. And we're talking to a guy right now who's probably going to step in as CEO of the company. And he comes from a very, very deep business background. He's a big game enthusiast, so that's going to help us out a lot too. And he's going to work with like the rest of us basically because he believes in what we're doing. And so I guess in a nutshell, just do your homework. Really, that's what you need to do to be able to be successful at it.
You actually just answered my next question, sort of. But if you have another answer for the question of if let's say a game dev is a few months into the production, like they have the idea for the game and they know that they want to make a game, what would you say is the best piece of advice, like one thing that they need to do and they might not be thinking about at that stage of development?
Well, I think it comes down to exactly what I just said. If you're going to be, putting a game out there on Steam or anything else, they aren't going to let you publish a game unless you have a business entity involved with who you are. Steam wants to, like, for instance, in any of the game, Apple, I don't care what platform you plan on releasing on, they all want to see a company based. They want to see a company bank account. They want to see or business bank account. They want to see a business tax ID number. They want all those things, and they look at your status, as far as a legal entity before they'll even consider publishing you. I mean, they may take a look at other things you're doing, but you really need to set yourself up as a business first. And then, so I would just say set yourself up as a business. It could be an LLC. It could be, something very, very simple. It could be a single, sole proprietorship. It doesn't really matter. As long as you have, a tax ID and an entity that represents, you and represents the product you're making, because they need to be able to have that a business account. So that way, when you start making money, all the money that you're making, from your game will go directly into a business account. They won't let it go into a personal account. So you really need to be aware of those types of things before you even get started. And if you've gone a long ways, with the game and you haven't created a business yet, I would say, create a business entity that you call yourself something and be sure it's legal. So that would be my biggest advice for that.
And chat, by the way, feel free to post questions and we'll be passing them along. One thing that I was thinking about, I'm not much of a business-minded person myself. How would you go about finding or partnering with somebody to do that? I mean, you've kind of been the CEO of Eagre Games for all this time, and now you're passing that hat on to a partner. How do you go about making that kind of relationship with somebody and judging whether or not that they would be a good fit?
Well, it's all about personal relationships. I think everything that we do, from the standpoint of when we're building a company and you're working with people, a lot of times when you're first starting out with a small company like this, you rely on people that you trust, that you've known. It's like people who I'm working with, I've known for a number of years. I've gotten to know them through any variety of ways, meeting them online or, through meetings, or just people I've known through friends who suggested someone that would be good for a particular role, either an artist or whatever, or a programmer. Or you're approached by people as well. That happens a lot, too. And then before you make decisions, you talk to these people, you get to know them. And, especially when it comes to the business side, I would recommend, if you are serious about, creating a game business and you think you have a really good, solid product or a series of products that you want to produce, that you believe in, you really need to take the time to get yourself involved in a local business community. There are a number of different startup enterprises and startup entities within almost every city and town that you go to, places where, there are a lot of like-minded people who are starting small businesses. They could be, anybody from doing a vodka business or a new restaurant, but all these people are in the same boat that you're in when you're first starting. And that boat essentially means that, you are treading in waters that maybe you've never done before. Maybe you've never started a business. Maybe you've never, asked anybody about how to actually do it. So there are a lot of local resources, no matter where you're at in the U.S. or even, or internationally. And a lot of them are very, very supportive of small startups. We're considered a small startup. And in the Bangor area, I've gotten to know through Startup Bangor and a couple of other things, some people through the last couple of years. I've done a couple of pitches, talking about the game company and about our game, and stood up in front of a bunch of people to tell people about it. And through that exposure about what we do, people have approached us, and I've gotten to know a number of people. So I've done a lot of networking locally. And I would say that the best thing to do is to, first of all, network like crazy. Find out who's who in your community. Find out who's involved with startup business. Find out whatever universities are nearby, have any kind of programs. Like local, we have something called Top Gun, which will teach you basically all the things that you need to know to start a business for the most part. And then as you're networking, you get to know people, and people, if they like what you're doing, will express an interest beyond just simply, a peripheral kind of, hey, that's cool, you're doing games, see you later. A lot of them will start asking you more questions about it, and you get to know them, and you develop relationships. And as far as being able to determine who's going to be good for you, it's all based around who you know and how you get to know people. And the only way to really get to know people is to get out into the community of small businesses and essentially, get involved in their meetings, get involved in their groups, join any groups that are small business oriented in your local community. This will expose you to a lot of people who can help you. And be it through investments, some communities are better at helping and, raise money than others. And, one of the most helpful things, again, is getting to know somebody who knows that investment community who can help you. Unless you happen to be exceptionally good at going in front of people and pitching what you're doing, finding somebody who knows that community will help you enormously down the line. And for me, it's this one guy. I can't say his name right now because we're still discussing some things, but he's been involved in a local Bangor business community for a long, long time. And he has helped a number of startups. He's involved with the university, and I've known him for about 2.5 years now. And we've talked back and forth quite a bit. And after the Kickstarter, it seems like, Bangor, who the investment community for the longest time would say, we're asking people to help us out with investment capital. We used to get this thing, well, I don't invest in video games, and then I would say, well, you don't invest in high-paying jobs in a local area. You don't invest in people who can pay, who are looking for high-speed internet that are going to bring jobs to community that possibly could spawn off other game companies, which basically also will spawn additional high-tech jobs. So it's, it's one of these things that where they didn't pay any attention to us really all that much before Kickstarter, but after Kickstarter they did. And Jason and I talked. Not supposed to say his name, but we talked after the Kickstarter quite a bit, and so we looked at where, we could figure out what we would need as far as a business manager to manage the business to allow me to move beyond just the business side of it and move into the actual production and the art production side of it and design side of it, which is where my strengths are. So I guess the short answer is network like crazy. Find somebody you like who has a passion in what you're doing and who knows something about business in ways that you don't have no clue. Find someone who knows what they're doing in that aspect of it. That would be my biggest advice because I'm not a person.
So we've got about 5 minutes left. There was a question that I want to bring up from the chat. What would you suggest for marketing your game with very little marketing budget?
We're talking shoestring budget.
Yeah, like what are the best avenues that you have found for getting the name of your game out there that won't break the bank?
It won't break the bank. Well, obviously social media. Yeah, it's free. Twitter, Facebook. We use Tumblr. You got Instagram. I mean, shit. There's so many different avenues to be able to put what you're doing out there. You've got to build a following, in order for people to know who you are. You gotta become involved with as many different types of social media groups, post all over the place. Marketing wise, Kickstarter. Honestly, Kickstarter was probably one of the biggest marketing things that we've done. It turned out to be a lot more valuable as a marketing tool than even raising money, I think. Because you have to have a decent product, something that people get excited about, and how you market that, how you sell that, in front of the public. You got to think about successful Kickstarters or other successful marketing campaigns have done in the past. Social media is the biggest way to get the word out. It's not the best way necessarily all the time, but it does spread the word if you can get a big enough response to what you're putting out there. But I would have to say that even though that's free and everything else, unless you've got something that's really good and compelling from a game standpoint, something that you could put in front of people, no matter how much marketing you do, you're not going to be able to sell it if less the product is really good, unless the game is really good. Because there are a lot of games out there. You have to do something that's going to differentiate yourself from everybody else. And I think really that's the biggest challenge. And, from the standpoint of I guess, I don't know, I'm trying to think in terms of what we did. We did a whole bunch of different things. I mean, obviously, the social media thing was the biggest thing that we did, and that Kickstarter was a great way to do it. But I think we have a very good product too. I think the game we're doing is something that stands out on its own pretty well. So you really got to look at your own work very objectively and know where its strengths are, know what makes it different. And if you have something that's different, that's where you really, really need to push that aspect of your game in front of everybody else. What makes it different? What mechanic makes it different? What aspect of the gameplay makes it different? Get that message out onto Kickstarter when you make a Kickstarter campaign, or into your social media circles, and that's what you have to grow. You got to push, hey, we do this really good, or take a look at this, or, whatever it is that you do well. That's what you want to push. So I would say that, that's the most bang for the buck. It's free, but you really, really have to pay a lot of attention to it. Kickstarter for us was a very big time suck, I guess you could call it, because it involved a lot, all of us putting in a lot of hours a day to keep it going, not only for interviews and things like that, but just to keep the social media circulating, and hopefully spreading the word through that way, as well as any other way we could get it out there. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, yes. that does perfectly.
Great, yeah.
And that's basically we've got just a couple more minutes if you wanted. Or you're self-publishing, and you commented on Kickstarter. I would say that's actually one of the things that a lot of people haven't realized that we picked up on is it's basically a full-time job running a Kickstarter, let alone a successful Kickstarter. So congratulations on that, and thank you for joining us. I appreciate you taking time out of the proverbial fire to jump on here.
Definitely.
And hope things can go smoother today for you.
Oh yeah. It's we're taking a couple of weeks off after Kickstarter kind of regroup, and that's what we're doing right now. And I'm taking care of a couple things that I'm going to be gone for a few days, so I have to get some stuff done and just get kind of caught up in it.
Yeah,
but
awesome.
Apologize for being late today. I really, honestly, I got kind of wrapped up on what I was doing here.
Not a problem. We definitely understand, and thank you for coming by. And hopefully we'll be able to do some live gameplay of ZED next year's IRX. Maybe have you come on and do another panel.
Definitely.
Oh, I'd love to. What I'll do too is, as we get along further with the next demo, I'll be sure you guys get a copy of it so you can play it. There'll be a lot more gameplay to it, and it's going to look quite a bit different than the original. I mean, it still has the same flavor to it, but it's going to definitely be something that's quite a bit further evolved than what you've seen already.
Well, excellent.
And we're super excited to see that. Make sure to check out eagregames.com. The link is in the chat. ZED is really, really neat. I can't wait to see what comes out of your guys' brains, because it's going to be awesome. I feel it.
Thanks. We hope so.
Yeah.
All right, guys. All right. I will. You guys too. Thanks again.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
I was Chuck Carter from Eagre Games. Link to the website is to his website is in the description. Coming up, we have our 7th game exhibit of IRX. We're talking Shardlight, 1D, Iron Snout, and a few others. So stay tuned for that at noon. We're going into a quick break. So while we are getting everything set up here, make sure to grab some lunch. If you are on the East Coast, maybe a morning stimulant beverage, as we were mentioning. We were mentioning earlier. Don't forget to check out the sponsors down below. We've got Game Kicker, Indie Box, and Tiny Build. And don't forget to sign up for the mega contest. At the end of the weekend, you can win 33 games if you sign up, and it's totally free to sign up. And we're going to be doing a bunch more giveaways today, so stick around. It'll be a lot of fun.